I spent the last few days fishing in Core Keeper, and after catching every fish in the game, I thought it would be a good idea to rank them from best to worst based on the bonuses they provide you after being cooked. So in this video, I'll be creating my tier list for cooked fish. Let's get started. For this video, I created a template over on tiermaker.com for all the fish that are currently in Core Keeper. There are currently 19 fish in the game as of this recording. I will leave a link for the template down in the description below, as well as a link for my Discord. If you want to make your own tier list for these fish and leave them over there to share with the community, that'd be great. Now, what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to rank all the fish based on the bonuses they provide after being cooked. Now, each fish is going to provide a couple of bonuses, at least 3. A couple of them provide 4. All of them are going to provide a plus food buff as well as a plus health regen. Now, we're not going to be looking at those because they all are about the same between each of these different fish or sea creatures. There's not a huge difference between them except for one fish, which does provide a bonus about double or triple the amount of health regen. So we'll be looking at that fish specifically for that buff. But for the rest of them, we're only gonna be looking at the unique buffs they provide. For example, one provides movement speed, another provides armor. So that's what we're gonna be looking at. And the way I did the ranking was I tried to be as objective as possible, but of course there's gonna be some subjectivity involved in this because everyone's playstyle is a little bit different. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at the bonuses based on how impactful they are in the game and how frequently they'll be impactful. So for example, if a bonus is going to be very high impact and it is going to be can be used in pretty much all situations, I'm going to give that a high score. If it's going to have a minimal impact and it can only be used in very specific situations, it's going to have a lower score. So with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the fish based on the biome they're located in, starting with the dirt biome, which is the first biome you spawn in, all the way out to the furthest biomes that are in the game right now, Azos' Wilderness and the Mole Dungeon. So the first fish you're most likely to catch, the most common fish in the dirt biome, is going to be the blue cave guppy. The blue cave guppy's bonus is it's going to give you plus 5% dodge chance for 5 minutes. Now, dodge chance can be useful if you combine it with other equipment such as armor, and you can get a decent dodge amount, but by itself, this to me is just not that useful because it's only going to give you a 5% chance, which means 1 in 20 times it's not going to actually work. So for that reason, I'm going to put this down in the C category. Next up is going to be the orange cave guppy. The orange cave guppy is going to be the second most common fish in the dirt biome, and that's going to give you plus 8 mining damage for 5 minutes. Now, early on, this might be useful. However, you can level up your mining damage very quickly in Core Keeper. As an example, the most recent character I created, after about 2 to 3 hours, I was at level 25 or 30 mining. And I started out as a nomad, so I had no bonuses to start with. And I was pretty much mining with my torch through the dirt biome. So you can level up your mining really quickly. You can also find the mining set of the Ring of Stone and the Ring of Rock. And it's just super easy to get a higher tier or a higher level of mining. So I just don't feel like this fish is ever anything I would actually use in the game. So for that reason, it's going to be down here in the D tier. The third most common fish in the dirt biome is going to be the rockjaw. The rockjaw gives you plus 15.9% melee damage for 5 minutes. This is going to be very useful. In fact, you could use this for a decent amount of time playing the game because it's going to give you flat damage bonus on top of melee. And more likely than not, especially early on, you're going to be using melee damage over range damage because it's much easier to acquire melee weapons over ranged weapons. So for that reason, we're going to drop the rockjaw in the B tier. The fourth and final sea creature you can catch in the dirt biome is going to be the gem crab. The gem crab is going to give you plus 14 armor for 5 minutes. Now, for me, armor is one of the weakest buffs you can get, specifically because the only way it's going to come into play is if you actually are taking damage. And for me, the goal of combat with any of the enemies in the game is to avoid taking any damage, or avoid all damage at all costs. So for me, it's kind of like a hit and run play style. If you're using a range attack, that's going to be completely useless. In addition to that, once you find carrots, a cooked carrot will give you plus 23 armor. So it's going to be better than this. So for that reason, I'm going to give this a C, and we're going to put this above the blue cave guppy, but overall, it'll be useful maybe very early on, but this is the rarest sea creature you can catch in the dirt biome, so I just don't see myself or very many people using this very often. Next biome we're going to take a look at is going to be the clay caves. The clay caves also has 4 sea creatures you can catch. The first up is going to be the green blisterhead. This is going to make you immune to acid damage for 30 seconds. Now, that's going to be useful if you're fighting the Hive Mother, which is going to be the second or third boss you run into, depending on where you adventure out. And it's also going to be useful if you're down in the hive area, the larva hive area where the Hive Mother is located, because there can be acid on the ground. However, it's only good for 30 seconds, and it's only useful in those very specific situations. I'm going to put it in the B tier here just because it can be useful for the boss fight, but because it's so situational and it's so short, it's not going to get a higher rating. Next up is going to be the yellow blister head, and it's going to give you a similar buff to the green blister head. It's going to give you immune to being slowed by slime for 30 seconds. So it's got the same bonus, except instead of making you immune to acid is going to make you immune to slime. This is probably only going to be useful when you're fighting Gorm the Devourer the first time, or maybe if you're farming him and you don't want to get slowed down by the slime. Outside of that, I guess you could possibly use it for farming the Glurch the Abominous Mass and maybe Ivy, because they do have slime around them. But overall, I just don't really worry about the slime. And typically when I'm fighting bosses that have slime in and around them, I usually clear the slime out. I'm going to give it a B. We're going to put it down here behind the one for acid, just because slime doesn't damage you. So at least this one's going to prevent you from taking damage. This is going to prevent you from taking slowing. But like I said, you can dig up both the acid and the slime with a shovel, so they're not super useful. And then the third creature you can catch in the clay caves is going to be the Devil Worm. The Devil Worm is going to give you plus 22.8% range damage for 5 minutes. This is far and away the best sea creature you can catch, or the seafood you can catch early in the game. This can be useful from the beginning of the game to the very end as of right now, because it's the only food that I've found so far that's going to give you plus range damage, and it's going to last for quite a long time. So I'm going to put that up in the S tier right now. It's the best early game fish. And then the last fish you can catch, or the last sea creature you can catch in the clay caves, is going to be the vampire eel. This is going to give you plus 3 life on melee for 5 minutes, which means when you hit an enemy with a melee weapon, you're going to get 3 health back. So similar to how the rune song works, and there's also, I believe there's the clot ring also gives you health back. So combining those all together could be useful. I'm going to end up putting it in the B category just because I think it's useful, but it's not like super useful. Next biome we're going to take a look at is going to be the Forgotten Ruins, or the stone biome. There's 4 fish there as well. The most common is going to be the daggerfin. The daggerfin gives you plus 13 thorn damage for 5 minutes. Now, as I said, I'm not a big fan of armor, and I'm not a big fan of thorns. The reason for those two is because they only provide benefit when you're actually taking damage, which to me you're trying to avoid. I'm going to put this down here in the middle. We're going to put it in the middle of the C category just because I think it's better than the dodge chance, but again, it's just not that great of a bonus. The pink palace fish is going to be the second most likely fish you're going to catch in the Forgotten Ruins. This is going to give you plus 4% melee attack speed for 5 minutes. That can be useful pretty much at any time throughout the game. So for that reason, we're going to put this up in the A category. Like I said, you can combine this with other foods to give you just an overall higher DPS, so it's very useful. The third most common fish in the Forgotten Ruins is going to be the teal palace fish. Like the pink palace fish, it's going to give you an attack speed. In this case, however, it's going to be ranged attack. So you're going to get plus 4% ranged attack speed for 5 minutes. For that reason, we're going to put this up in the A tier as well, because it can be useful from the beginning of the game all the way to the end for giving you a higher DPS. And then last but not least is going to be the crown squid. This is the rarest fish, or the rarest sea creature in the Forgotten Ruins. It's going to give you a 10% chance to knock back an enemy for 5 minutes. In my opinion, that's kind of okay, but overall, it's just not that. I just don't see it being like that super useful. So I'm going to put it down here in the B category. We're going to put it right in the middle as the third level B. So those are the ones for the Forgotten Ruins. Next, we're going to look at the Azos' Wilderness. There are also 4 fish in Azos' Wilderness. Now, before we talk about these, what I want to do is clarify the different waters. So in Azos' Wilderness, there's 2 different types of water. You're going to see the blue water. That's the one we're going to be talking about first, where there's 4 fish. There's also going to be murky water. That's going to be the mold water. However, they're both in the wilderness. The mold water will also be, or the murky water will be inside the mold dungeons, but it can also be around them. So do be careful if you're digging or terraforming. The murky water, if it combines with the blue water, will overtake it and completely replace it. So be careful if you're trying to set up a fishing area that you are mindful of that. So the most common fish you can find in Azos' Wilderness is going to be the Azor featherfish. This is going to give you health regen of 8.1 every second for 20 seconds. So this was the fish I was talking about that's going to give you the higher health regen. This is useful. It can be used pretty much in all situations. So for that reason, we're going to put it up here in the A category. I'm going to put it at the bottom of the A category for now because it is useful. But overall, if you have a ton of HP, it's not going to be really that impactful. The second most common fish in the Azos' Wilderness is going to be the emerald featherfish. In my opinion of the fish here, this is the best one you can get. The reason for that is it has 2 bonuses. It's going to give you max HP of 29, and it's also going to give you plus critical hit chance of 7% for 5 minutes. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting this in the A category. We'll be putting it at the top here. That's just useful in all situations. Getting extra health for 5 minutes, as well as having a higher critical percent chance. The third most common fish in the Azos' Wilderness is going to be the Spirit Veil. This is going to give you plus 36.2% movement speed for 1 minute. Now, the plus 36.2% movement speed comes with a bonus, but it also comes with a negative. The bonus is obviously you're going to cover more ground faster. The negative is going to be the way food depletes in the game is the more ground you cover, the faster it depletes. I believe it's every 25 or 26 blocks you cover will reduce your food by 1. So if you're using this, you're going to move faster, but you're also going to burn food faster. It also only lasts for 1 minute. So for that reason, while it is useful in all situations, we're going to put it in the A. We're going to put it down here at the bottom. And then the final fish that you can catch inside of the Azos' Wilderness is going to be the Astral Jelly. So what this does is it's going to give you plus 63 fishing for 5 minutes. Now, that is a big time impact. Of course, it's only useful in that one situation for fishing, but because it gives you such a massive impact, I'm going to make it an A, and we're going to put it in here just in front of the Azure Featherfish. So the last biome we're going to take a look at is the one that has the least fish, or the least sea creatures. It only has 3. However, it does have, in my opinion, the best in the game. That's going to be the mold shark. The mold shark is the most common fish you're going to catch in the murky water or the mold water. It's going to give you plus 38.6% melee damage for 5 minutes. To me, this is the best fish in the game. I would use that as soon as I start getting them, and I did get a bunch of them the other day when I was fishing. I'm going to start using this all the time because if I'm using melee, this is just going to be the go-to food because it provides so much extra damage. Combining it with like the pink palace fish, that's going to give you the extra melee attack speed. You're going to talk about plus 4% melee, plus 38.6% melee damage. That's a ton of extra DPS you're going to be putting out if you're using melee damage. The second most common fish in the mold water is going to be the rot fish. This is going to give you immune to mold infection for 30 seconds. This is only going to be useful in one situation, and that's going in the mold dungeons. Now, if you don't have the mold set, the mold necklace, and the mold ring, it can be useful for that. However, because it only lasts for 30 seconds, you're going to end up having to either eat it very often or you're just pretty much not going to use it. I'm going to put it down here in B. It's kind of situational. I'm going to put it in the same category as these others that are situational, the one that give you immune to acid and slime, but I'm going to put it above them because the mold dungeon, in my opinion, is harder. So that's where we're going to put it. And now the last but not least, this was the rarest sea creature, the one that I caught the fewest of. I spent more time in the mold water fishing than any of the other areas, and I caught the least amount. This was the fish or the sea creature I ended up with the least amount of. That's the black steel urchin. This is one of only 2 sea creatures that provide 2 buffs in addition to the emerald featherfish. This is going to give you plus 22 armor and plus 15 thorns damage for 5 minutes. Now, unfortunately, those are the 2 buffs that I look down upon or that I consider the least important. But because it does give you 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in here in the A category. It can be useful in all situations. Again, I don't like the fact that it's going to only give you a buff when you're actually taking damage, but it does give you 2 buffs. However, they're super rare to catch. You're going to have to spend a lot of time catching these. So I don't see people using them too often, but they are useful in all situations. So that's my tier list for all the fish that are currently in Core Keeper as cooking them. Now, one thing I may not have mentioned earlier was the buffs that I was mentioning were how much you would get the base amount by just cooking them. You will get more if you combine them with golden foods or if you have the skill that gives you the chance to get rare epic foods. So these are just the base amounts they're going to give you. They also all provide you some amount of plus food and some amount of plus health over time. So that's my list. If you want to make your own, I will leave a link for this tier list or this tier template down in the description below, as well as a link to my Discord if you want to share it over there. If you found this video helpful, make sure to click the like button and consider subscribing for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.